I'm a girl with a passion for vintage fashion, but becoming a part of the vintage community has been nothing short of simple. Today, I am ready to tell my story and share all the unwelcoming experiences that I've dealt with over the past few years with fellow vintage sellers. Hit that subscribe button to follow my journey, watch me hunt for vintage, and rise above all the hate along the way.
All up in the Nolaverse, all up in the Nolaverse. There's community and fashion, entertainment and play. What are we going to do today? Up in the Nolaverse.
Hello, magical misfits. It's your girl Nola Bunny, and welcome back to the Nolaverse. When you hear the word culture, what comes to mind? What does culture mean to you? Let me know in a comment below. What I am so fascinated with by the idea of culture is that there truly is a culture for every passion, hobby, genre, aesthetic. I personally am a part of the performance culture, specifically the burlesque culture, the entrepreneur culture. I am a part of the vintage culture. Culture and community go hand in hand. Culture creates community, which is made up of people that have this shared passion. That is the thing that brought people together. But just because people have this shared passion, it doesn't necessarily mean that every life view is shared. Although I am a part of all these different cultures, I have had a significantly harder time becoming a part of the community within these various cultures. Today, I am going to share my story about trying to be a part of the vintage community. I've been wearing secondhand clothes for as long as I can remember. My older cousin would hand me down her clothes. A lot of my friends when I was growing up would hand me down their clothes. My mom would get bags and bags of clothes from friends, and I have never been a stranger to secondhand clothing. My mom also used to be a fashion designer, so I feel like finding my own personal style has been a journey that I was meant to be on. And when I started dating Michael, he brought me to all the secondhand spots in New Jersey. I'd already had a distaste for fast fashion for a long time up until this point. And when I started going to all these secondhand shops, I was specifically drawn to the vintage clothing. From 2016 to 2018, I had a pretty big collection. I started finding pieces that weren't my size, and something made me want to still purchase them and start my own vintage business. So in 2018, Nola Bunny Vintage was born. When I opened up my shop, I was on Instagram, Poshmark, and Etsy, mainly making sales through people that knew me directly and people on Poshmark who would make lowball offers. Even now, I would say that sourcing the clothing and documenting them is probably my favorite part about being a vintage seller, because the hunt is so exciting, and then bringing them to life as a model and a dancer and a performance artist and a fashion stylist is so exciting to me. I was starting to create a brand that goes hand in hand with all the other beautiful theatrical things that I do in my life. At this point, my shop was very much on a hobby level, and I was determined to grow it. So I started exploring with posting on Facebook Marketplace. A lot of people were telling me that they had good experiences on there. So I would post my items, and I unfortunately only experienced harassment from men who found me attractive, or harassment from women who were telling me, why am I modeling these items when I could just be putting them on a mannequin or hanging them on a hanger, which to me is so lifeless. I love to bring these clothing to life on a body and through the joy that they make me feel, which can be felt through an image. Plus, I don't think you can see the details the same way when it's just hanging on a hanger. It kind of looks like a big clump of nothingness. I started exploring vintage buy and sell Facebook groups, but none of them brought me any sales until I found good old-fashioned, funky, gnarly, bangin' vintage in 2021. This group has a reputation of bringing some of the best vintage sellers in the community under one internet roof. And it was the first group that I really felt acknowledged for what I brought to the table. And I kind of started becoming a part of a community. Now, this is February 2021. One of my earlier posts in that group, I was wearing a long sequin vest. I didn't have any top underneath it, but you weren't able to see anything. And the post was removed without a warning. So I reached out to the admin privately and asked why my post was removed. And they stated that we asked our members to display modesty in our photos. The word modesty was in no rule, nor did my photo go against any of the Facebook guidelines. It was clear to me that I was being discriminated against for bringing a little bit of my showgirl vibe to my vintage brand. Despite feeling like the admins had something against me, it was the first Facebook group that I made direct sales in. In October 2021, I posted a vintage camisole, and these two older women were very adamant in their argument that it was not a camisole, but was instead a vintage teddy. One of the women claimed that she modeled for this company in the 80s, and she knows this design, and she knows it's a teddy. And I said, no, I assure you, it is a camisole. Now, to be fair, the way that I was posed in it, it looked a little bit like it went between my legs as opposed to what a camisole does. And I can totally own up to that. But I, the person with the garment in my hand, assured them that it was not a teddy and it was in fact a camisole, and that I know the difference between teddies and camisoles. After going back and forth and them just sticking to their gun that this is a teddy, I was removed from the group without a warning. On January 29th, 2022, I purchased a catsuit from a seller, and before I paid her, I asked her, what decade do you think this catsuit is? And she told me it is 70s. I received it by February 5th, tried it on, and it fit me. I'd been wanting a vintage fishnetty lace catsuit for a while, and I was really excited that it fit me. While I was still wearing the garment, I messaged the seller, all excited, it fits perfectly, thank you so much. And then when I took it off, my vintage spidey senses started tingling. It was the zipper. It's clearly a very modern zipper. After I looked at the zipper, I then looked up the company. This woman sold me a fast fashion catsuit, and I believe I spent around $60 on something that I probably could have gotten for brand new for like maybe $15, $20 tops. And I kept it to myself because I was embarrassed about getting excited so quickly and telling her how much I liked it. It was mid-February when I was in a restaurant with Michael, and the conversation came up, and I told him, hey, remember that catsuit? Well, it's not what I thought I was buying. I'm never gonna wear it, and that sucks. And he told me I should let her know that even if I'm doing it without any expectations, at least let her know, because she should care. She should care to want to know. We're all working together here to keep a certain level of integrity in the vintage community, right? So I let her know. It was an uncomfortable conversation. At first I told her I had no expectations, and she really shrugged me off and said everybody makes mistakes and took no accountability for what she did. And I had talked to a couple other people in the vintage community and Michael, who also has a background as a reseller, who encouraged me, you know, this is one of those instances, even if this much time passed, she should really own up to this and you deserve something. So we went back and forth for a while, and One of the last things that she had said to me during one of these back and forth conversations was, go to a burlesque show and make some money. That left a really poor taste in my mouth, and I did end up making a Facebook status about my experience with this seller and found out that I'm not the only one that dealt with these experiences of her selling fast fashion items off as vintage, that I actually dealt with a scammer. I was able to get a full refund, but the lack of accountability and career shaming really did not sit well with me no matter how much time passed. And over all these months, I saw many people excited about receiving a garment from her and how wonderful of a seller she is. And that really bothered me. Sometime in June 2022, I made another social media post expressing how it's a shame that so many people are praising this seller who is a scam artist when I have had such disregard in the community. Let's back it up a little bit. In December 2021, I started posting my items regularly in another Facebook buy and sell group called Vintage Clothing and Accessories. On January 19th, 2021, I was told by the admin to no longer post videos of my items. I described a little bit before how I really like to use my love for modeling and dancing and entertainment and mesh those two worlds with my vintage clothing. So I'm notorious for dancing around in the pieces to really show the movement. It does have a point. It's not just for fun, which is even better in my opinion than a still photo. She had said that she appreciated my artistic style, but not in her group. She also added that she never expected someone to make that kind of post, and when I asked for her to elaborate, she failed to do so. Until I asked for transparency because I enjoyed being a part of the group, and I would like to understand what she didn't like or didn't expect so I don't do it again. And that was when she said that my posts are a bit burlesque style and that this is a buy and sell group. After I was advised not to post dancing videos, I started seeing other sellers posting dance videos that show off their fun, bubbly personalities, and it felt like a bit of a double standard. This was now the second time that my career as a burlesque dancer was talked down to, and the third time that me being a little pin-up-y, a little showgirly was seen as a bad thing as a vintage seller. Here's what's really crazy to me. When you think of modern pin-up girls, who do you think of? Who are the people that are going to buy your $400 gowns and bring them to life on stage? Burlesque performers. Vintage sellers, be nice to your burlesque performers. Do not shame them because burlesque performers are vintage buyers. Now, let's get back to the scammer. On July 14th, I received a message from the admin of the Vintage Clothing and Accessories group telling me that my post was distasteful. And I'm just a little confused and taken aback, and I asked her what post, because I was on a road trip and I hadn't posted in her group in days. And she referred back to this specific social media post that I had made a month before, feeling bothered about how much praise this scammer was receiving. Here's the thing. When I first experienced the scam artist, I did put out a warning to admins in these vintage Facebook groups that we were both in because I thought that they would care that there's a scam artist in our realm. So she was aware when I was dealing with it. Yet she came into my personal inbox about a post I made on my personal Facebook wall a month prior to her coming into my personal inbox and making it a problem inside of her group. A few days later, I was looking for the Vintage Clothing and Accessories group on Facebook to make a sale post, and I could no longer find the group. I was removed. I found out later that the scam artist is a moderator in this vintage clothing and accessory group So the admin of the group was more concerned with protecting her and made me the culprit. It was around this time that I was invited into a brand new Facebook group called Quirky Groovy Vintage. There were only a few members in this group, and I was personally invited by the admins that put the group together. These three women are all close to my age in comparison than a lot of the other women I've mentioned in this video. And their message for this group is that they don't tolerate bullies and everyone belongs. So I was a little surprised when I had an unfortunate experience with one of their moderators. One of their moderators made a post about a dress that was clearly not vintage. And I actually looked the label up and saw that it was from like the 2000s. And a lot of these vintage groups, as well as this one, are like 90s and earlier. I think this one might be like 99 and earlier. I could be mistaken, but definitely not 2000s. So I asked her about the dress and if she's sure that it's vintage, and it looks like the company's been around since about the early 2000s. And she responded really aggressively. She was so offended that I asked this question, and she told me to do my research before commenting, which is absurd to me because it is up to the seller to do their research before posting. They should be researching the labels. That's the first research. If a vintage garment has a label, that's the first thing that you search. If you can't find that, then you go on to the zipper and the lining, and if there's a union made tag and all that stuff. I personally look at labels, and if I'm not familiar with the brand, I look it up. So she put blame onto me that I should be doing my research, and this is definitely a vintage item. I do want to be clear that at this point into my attempt, this is summer 2022, and for this whole year, 2021, up until this point, I've been trying to be a part of the community and trying to be a part of the community, and I keep getting shut down. I was definitely on defense mode, and I can very clearly admit that. This moderator slash seller then made a post praising a fellow seller who is an incredible seller, is an incredible woman, and I personally love, and they do deserve praise, but in this praise, she kind of put out a reminder that this group is against bullying, and it was very backhanded. She was acting as though I was a bully for asking this question that I asked about this garment that didn't seem like vintage in a vintage group. I had a conversation with the three admins who, up until this point, I had a pretty good relationship with. I do recall one of the admins let me know that this seller was removed from the moderator team, but all her friends were really upset and were wondering why. And they were more concerned with the fact that her friends were upset that she was no longer a moderator than they were with her character and what even led them to make the decision to remove her from the moderator team. And this too resulted in my removal from the group. It's amazing to me what brains can block out and then remember later. I'm in the middle of editing this video and a light bulb came off that this same admin, while we were discussing the moderator, who was no longer a moderator, started asking me to provide proof about the scam artist that I had dealt with. This did not happen in her group, and I was now being asked to provide proof. But wait, there's more. Just last week, I posted a dress in two groups. One is called Effed But Fabulous, where you post pieces that are effed but fabulous. And another is called Ooh La La Vintage. Now, Ooh La La Vintage has two groups. One of them is for earlier decades, 20s to 50s, and one of them is like 60s to 90s. A 60s to 90s group you can post and you don't need your post approved, but the earlier group, you do need your post approved. So even before I posted in the Effed But Fabulous group, I posted in the Ooh La La earlier decades group, and they approved the dress. It is this gorgeous 1950s dress. Now in the Effed But Fabulous group, after it was already approved in the Ooh La La group, there is a woman who responded out of left field about something that I didn't fully understand. My description was very clear that the cups of the bra had this flakiness coming out of them. It was just the cups of the bra. Everything else in the dress was perfect. And it's this gorgeous 1950s dress. She said, if the devil dust is that bad, you should really be more clear in your description. And at the surface, that doesn't seem like the worst thing, but you gotta understand, after all these experiences I've had, I do go into defense mode when I feel like I'm being pushed by yet another fellow vintage seller. And I was a little confused, and I asked her, did you read my post? Because it is in the description. We were going back and forth. I felt like she was being rude and not explaining to me what the point of what she was saying even was. It wasn't until a couple other people chimed in and explained, one with article evidence, what devil dust actually is. Although I've been doing this since 2018 and collecting for a couple years before then, I learned something new every day, and it was just last week where I learned that the term for fabric breaking down, like in cups and sometimes other parts of the garment too, mine was a case where it wasn't really that bad, but synthetic vintage fabrics breaking down and doing this sandy effect when you touch it, the term is devil dust. And I didn't realize that it can actually be really harmful. Now, I'm lucky that in this case, it was just the cups. When I understood with clarity and other people explaining what devil dust actually is and how it's harmful, I took action immediately and I removed the post from every place it was on social media. My Instagram, my personal Facebook group, my Etsy, my Poshmark, my Depop. And I went to delete it from the Ooh La La group, but surprise, surprise, I was no longer a member. So I didn't get to delete that. And I kept searching for the group. I'm like, am I typing it wrong? And then I figured out, yeah, no. The admins in that group are obviously in the Effed But Fabulous group, and they probably saw me as bad, even though I sincerely didn't understand how harmful devil dust is. We're in 2023 after 2 years of dealing with this and being removed from all these groups. I gotta tell you, it hurts a lot less. And despite all this, despite being removed from nearly every vintage buy and sell Facebook group I've ever tried to be involved in, and having gatekeepers block me from getting the chance to be a part of the community, my passion for vintage fashion will prevail. I am proud to say that since 2021, while I'm dealing with all of this, my vintage business was becoming less of a hobby. And at this point, it's really grown, and I know it's only going to go up from here. I've also found ways to bring my passion for vintage fashion into the other aspects of my life. I style my fellow performers in vintage clothing. I wear vintage clothing on stage of my burlesque shows. And like I said before, by modeling the vintage clothing I have for sale, I am bringing my talents of posing and being a character to life. If you love something, nobody can take it away from you. When there is a will, there is a way. Your passion and your love is so much stronger than those that judge you and don't make you feel included. I do want to take a moment to shout out 3 women who have made me feel like a member of the vintage community, who have treated me like an ally and a human being. Amanda of Irreverent Finery, Lisa of 55,000 Dresses, and MJ, who is an admin of another fabulous vintage group, No Sales Vintage Clothing and Accessories. Thank you, ladies, for making me feel seen. If you want to support my vintage business, I am going to leave links down below to my Instagram, Etsy, Depop, Poshmark. I'm on all of it. My personal favorite is direct sales. So if you see something you like, message me on Instagram. We can make it yours. And I'm also going to leave a link to all the women who deserve your support. I also currently have a vintage lingerie collection out And I'm going to be slowly posting that throughout the month to celebrate Valentine's Day. So buy something for yourself or your loved one from a small business. And remember, folks, buy vintage, save the world. Till next time, my friends.